Cool. Glad, Simon. So now I've got a character, it came from nothing, and there's a lot more that I can do. I could have discovered stuff in the process, you know, that I'll go back, like maybe I'll change his feet, or maybe I'll change his hands. But we've got a rhinoceros with orangutan, or with gorilla arms. Would have been harder to do that in a default pose, to do that and get this kind of result. Instead, in half an hour, I did everything all inside of ZBrush. And that's really where it's all going. I mean, I see ZBrush being used on a high level so often. One of the cornerstones of Neville Page, and I just use it because Neville Page is a friend, and I saw his kind of process the most. Now he's on, I think, Face Off and directing. So I'm not intending to kind of pull his new career into it. Neville's the one I know because I worked with him and things like that. But when I saw him doing designs, you know, he does it all in ZBrush. And when I was talking to the guys that did Avatar, it's, you know, ZBrush was just such a powerful force there. So much of it happens. Some people might also just take this into a neutral pose. Document. Where's back? Yeah. Shift S. On from there. All right, now I don't think Damien's going to meet up with you guys. We've been going at this for almost 2 hours. I kind of think the best thing for you guys to do, and I think the thing that would be really neat to really push your boundaries, is try to do this process. Try to kind of throw something off, go total creative, and then try to pull it back to production. You up to that? Yeah? Really push what you can do. I mean, you can see I'm doing thumbnailing at the end, right? Everybody teaches you do thumbnailing first. But, you know, I've done things backwards my whole life. And it works, you know? But the key thing with doing thumbnailing now is now I can thumbnail around a concept, not just at random. I can thumbnail and try to figure this guy out. And that's the cool thing about ZBrush. And it's also the thing about creativity that's happening now is the linear processes are gone. You know, all right, so you've got this guy kind of mapped out. Well, why don't we go back into design? And let's redesign this guy. Constant redesign. Constant iteration, but iteration on a high level where you're iterating almost from scratch all over again. Because at this point, we could, if we wanted to, get rid of this whole thing up here. We can just come up here in the clip. Will clip work? Yeah. You can saw a little V in the guy's back. There's a lot of things we could do, but our process is so far along that now when we iterate, it's so rich. So much can happen. And that, I think, is one of the really cool things about it. And it's something I do in, like, when I do my oil painting and things like that. Everything changes so fast and so often. If I have to repaint a figure, I repaint. It's all good. So let's do this. Let's get in this kind of a creative mindset and push things, because I want you guys to be really creature design beasts. There's going to be one problem that occurs, though. Any thought on what's going to be the problem? What do you think would be one of the pitfalls that you're going to run into? Definitely you're going to run out of time. Really good point. There's one other thing that's going to happen. And you already know this because you've already run into it. There's one thing that keeps coming up in your mind all the time, and it's slowing you down. I've taught so often, I know there's this one thing. I'm just waiting to see if anybody can get it. There's one thing. What about anatomy? Who is going to spend, let's say a couple of hours looking at anatomy and trying to figure that out? Because I just did a whole bunch of stuff on horse anatomy, right? So there's a really important element at stake here. You're going to learn more about anatomy. That road is not over. You are going to learn more about animal anatomy. But this is a design moment. You want to limit how much new information you take in, and you want to see if you can force yourself to learn anatomy after. Put yourself in a position where you have to figure out anatomy. Right now you just don't know what's going on. But you know you can figure it out, because anything can get figured out. I mean, anything. There's no anatomy that you would not be able to figure out, but yet still sculpt. It's just, there's always a way. And that is the job. But right now, what I want you to do is experience as much of this freedom as you can right from the beginning. See if you can kind of push and pull something and do it in this exact process. Remember, in the beginning, I wasn't really focused on anatomy. Only a little bit. And then the arms were too human, and I had one arm up here, and then I changed it later. So minimize the extra learning and try to just get something on that's going to force you to grow and learn the anatomy. And then you can really push anatomy when you get at this stage. Cool? Is it a deal? Less anatomy in the beginning. Think about anatomy as something you have to do later. And that's not a small thing. It's a really important request I'm asking from you. It's an important request because it's how the pros do it. Like, it's not a foo-foo kind of deal. It's literally how the pros do it. The guys who make, hundreds of thousands of dollars designing for awesome movies. If you're a director, you don't give a crap about the anatomy. You want the thing to be cool, to be, totally believable, and just the most awesome thing that's been seen on screen. First, you got to make it awesome. Then you put the anatomy in. It's how Carlos works. It's how Neville works. It's how these guys work. You first make something awesome, and then you're like, oh, I really got to figure out how that anatomy works. And that becomes its own stage. That's a really awesome stage, because now you're in there figuring out how anatomy works and the mechanics. But it's not the first phase, because if it's the first phase, what's going to happen? You guys know this. What's going to happen? The first thing, if you're thinking about anatomy, how is it going to affect your design? Simon has it. You get bogged down. You're going to lose the feeling. You're going to get kind of, maybe bored, or maybe you're going to have some negative thoughts creep in, and you're going to lose the energy. But no matter what, your sculpt will suffer if anatomy and making it quote-unquote right are in your brain at the very beginning. If making it right is what you want to do, then it's not a creature anymore. Because creatures aren't right. They're totally non-existent beasts. They're wrong in all ways imaginable, hopefully. All right. Have fun. Have a great, are we heading to, it's the week and then the weekend. So we're in good shape. Have a great week. I think Damien will see you guys on Friday, if I'm not mistaken. Sculpt away, focus on design, and just try to open up your brain and your heart to kind of new possibilities. And trust yourself, man. I don't know how many times I've drawn or sculpted something and I've kind of hated it at night. And there's a couple of things that I didn't have time to fix. I woke up the next morning and I was like, oh, wow, that's actually kind of cool. But if I had destroyed it the night before, I would have never been able to see that. Like, for example, the demo head that's in ZBrush. Like, I sculpted that, and you know, it's not my favorite sculpt. But the demo head, I just hated, loathed that thing. And then walked in the next day, and Ofer was like, yeah, I really like that. Keep that. We're going to throw that in. And I was like, are you sure? Because that really sucks. and then later on, I realized, well, okay, this is why I thought it sucked. But these things are actually pretty good. So go easy on yourself. See you guys. See you, Simon. See you, Christian. See you, Marcos. See you, Kristen. Have a fantastic week. Kingsley, you're recording this, right? Just give me a shout out in the chat. Yeah. Okay, so just tell Damien that it's there and it's ready, and you guys can cut it up on that side. He can help you there. All right. Ciao, ciao, everybody. You may want to save chat log. Now's the moment. Oh, Simon had a question. Simon, I wondered if you had any quick tips on making forms more clear. Yeah, Simon, I think your model is actually even still here. So, yeah, Simon, let me take 2 seconds and answer this. Wobbliness is this. Am I wrong? There's a couple of ways to think about wobbliness here, and this is kind of one of the cool science sides of art. Wobbly is a very loose word, but it actually has a very intense and significant meaning here. This isn't wobbly in my book. What this is lacking hierarchy. It's wobbly because you don't have hierarchy. It looks wobbly because you don't have a sense of how these things are actually structured. How do these connect? If you resolve how they connect, everything's going to get kind of figured out. So how do they connect? So let's look at insect morphology. Look at their leg. Look at the words. You don't need to remember these after the point in which you say them to yourself while you sculpt it. Coxa. It's a trochanter. Oh, isn't that cool? They have a femur. Wow. They have a tibia. But look at how they're structured, because their bony structure is totally different. They don't just connect like ours do, you know. Our femur will just come in and connect to the tibia, and they just touch each other. That's not what's happening here. In this particular case, they're like a funnel. And then the other one comes from inside that. And it comes from inside that. And it comes from inside that. And it comes from inside that. So you need to get the sense that they're overlapping, that there's a hierarchy. This one's on top. This one's on bottom. If you get that sorted, wobbliness becomes a secondary consideration and actually might be part of the design. So the way in which I might do that is, say, mask off a section. and maybe even just insert them. Is wobbliness the same concern anymore? Which ones look more wobbly than the others? Do you see how wobbly isn't really the issue? It's that they didn't have a clear hierarchy or a sense of form. So what was missing was the anatomy. Now, the wobbliness that's there is really, it's maybe not the case. So we can come in with H-polish, and we can kind of just tap this thing down, or depending on how you want to do it, you can come in with clay buildup with a very low depth embed. In fact, I find clay buildup with embed set to 0 to be pretty cool. And then press Alt and come around in places like this. It'll still, even though embed is set to 0, it'll still build form. So that's the really interesting part of it. But it does cool things to the form too. But wobbliness is not the concern at this point. Alrighty. So anytime you're wobbly also in humans, it's the same kind of thing. It's not wobbly, it's that it's missing that hierarchy. Where's the knee? Where's the overlap? Where's, that's what it's missing. Hope that was useful. Alrighty. Have a great week, guys. Talk to you later.